So hello everyone, welcome to the official start of the webinar. As Mina said, if you missed it, I'm Zoe Cunningham. I'm the director at Softwire and I'm the host of our Digital Lighthouse podcast, where I talk to tech leaders about their challenges and leadership tips and all that kind of exciting stuff. Today we have a live Tech Talk event, which is being recorded and will be sent to all attendees later this week. But of course, before the end, we'll also be running a Q&A. So do submit your questions into the Q&A box below. And what we'll do is we'll get to as many as we can. So the earlier you ask your question, I always say this, the earlier you ask a question, the more chance we have to come to it, because it's really normal that people tend to think of questions right at the end and think, oh, I want to know that. If you have a question, please do send it in as soon as possible. So without further ado, I am absolutely delighted to introduce our special guest, Mariot Chauvin, who is the Director of Engineering at Guardian News and Media. Previous to this role, Mariot worked at Singularity in Paris on designing and building highly scalable information systems, at OBO on complex systems modeling, and at IBM Zurich Research Laboratory on the creation of a messaging protocol for wireless sensor networks. I'm sure everyone in the audience has heard of Guardian News and Media. It's globally renowned for its coverage of politics, the environment, science, social justice, sports and culture. Its journalists deliver agenda-setting investigations, breaking live news, compelling opinion writing and the liveliest features. It's also well known for its award-winning podcasts, video documentaries and infographics and visuals. So given the grand size and demands on the Guardian's technical systems, how do they keep up with the demands of its journalistic staff, cater for the needs of millions of viewers and deliver seamless integrations for the subscription-based business model? So that's what we'll be finding out today. Welcome, Mariot. Thanks so much for coming on.
Hi everyone, thank you Zoe for the opportunity to talk. I'm really looking forward for questions and trying to share an overview on how we work at The Guardian and the kind of challenges we have.
Amazing, thank you so much. Well, as Mina teased a little bit earlier, Mariot looks after roughly 140 software developers that work in 26 cross-functional teams, who are responsible for a large estate of technology ranging from the Guardian mobile apps and the public-facing website to the editorial tool suite and all of the supporting platforms for journalists. So question one, how do you manage so many multidisciplinary teams that all sit within your remit?
So I think first I would like to say that it's obviously a collaborative effort. It's not only one person. I have very talented colleagues within my SLT that look at projects, UX, and as well Scrum mastering or project management. But as well a very talented engineering management team, which we share ideas and we discuss. So it's first a collaborative effort, and I'm trying to lead them, but it's really a collaborative effort. Then I think we have noticed across the years that the best way to for teams to be successful is for them to be small and autonomous. So there is a conscious choice from us to just not having big teams with the large remit, but rather having a small team, very multidisciplinary, because we have noticed years after years that the smallest one with the smallest remit were the one that were able to be more performant. And when I say more performant, achieve more at the end for the business and big. It's obviously not always easy, right? Because there is a lot of decision and collaboration needed between teams. We have quite a lot of process in a way to deal with that. One example is one meeting we have weekly, which is called Blocker Independency, where we discuss everyone at least one person from every team is joining that meeting, and this is where we share, for instance, where I have blocker, where there are dependencies between teams, which is a very agile way to trying to figure out all of the dependencies from all of those teams in advance, which we try a bit, but we as well conscious that new blockers and dependency will arise, and we try to manage them as they come and trying to find the right. So where there is considerable effort into planning and into thinking about quarter ahead or year ahead, there is as well a lot of correction and adjustment within a quarter to ensuring that actually every team is able to deliver and achieve. Even if we aim them to be autonomous, in practice, there is always dependencies and blocker. Another thing I think which is important for me to say is we have grown significantly in the last year, and before we scale, we knew there was going to be challenges in terms of the number of teams, and it's not the same to have 26 teams than it is to have 15 teams. Like every time you grow, there is new problem coming. Very similar to a software developer perspective, there is always new bottleneck. Every time you scale your software, you discover that there is new problems. So one thing we decided to do was to invest in what we call a developer experience team, which is teams that are not immediately linked to a business objective as it is, but more linked to the objective of the department, and which are in support really of the software development teams. We have now 4 of them, and they're looking at everything that is quite common, for instance, deployment, for instance, operations, logging, and tooling. And we knew that by scaling to a very large number of teams, or at least more larger of teams, we will need better standardization, best practices, and a way to encode them. So the objective of those teams is to provide guidance and support through providing what we call the paved road, which is an analogy from Netflix, which is providing a lot of by default services and helpful services and libraries that can be adopted by teams. So I encourage more standardization across the teams, but enable enough flexibility for teams to sometimes not adopt a particular practice or not adopt a particular technology, when actually there's a good reason for not following them. As I mentioned, it's not easy or simple, right? There is a lot of work for many people to try to do that. And it's a constant thinking about how we are best doing things, how much work should be within a team, or how much work actually should be solved by another team, and what is actually helpful to actually put it as a standard versus where some teams can change. And we have had a lot of really good discussion within teams and with the developers as well around what are the right tools? What do you expect for you to be provided versus what you would like to be involved? Notably around infrastructures. One of the first principles we had many years ago as a way of operating was to say software and hardware are intimately linked. When I say hardware, I mean infrastructures, and it's better for a team to be responsible for their software, but as well infrastructures. And we want to encourage the team to be responsible for it. But obviously, managing infrastructure and managing software is not always the same skill set, and you need a broader amount of skill set. So we have done a large amount of work recently on trying to providing better template or higher level template. That's what you can do directly on AWS to help team not having to have that immense cognitive load about having to have a very, very rich skill set and domain knowledge, which is obviously can be quite difficult when you need to think about absolutely everything in your tech stack.
This is fantastic, because I feel like as a host, I've almost not needed that as you keep talking, you keep highlighting all of these trade-offs, because I think a lot of these decisions are trade-offs. So you started by talking about the size of your teams, and obviously 26 teams across 140 people. That's quite a large you've taken a decision to have small teams. Then the challenge is, great, you've got these really small, close-knit teams, but how do you communicate between teams? Because now there are a large number of people who are not in your team. And then when you're talking about the developer experience function, which sounds again like a fantastic way of making sure that developers are working as fast as they can, or producing code, delivering as fast as they can, which I know is a topic that comes up all the time. So there's that aspect to it, but there's also this aspect of being autonomous as a team and making your own decisions versus, standardization, and is everyone working on the same platform and using the same tools, and does everything interoperate properly? So how much do you think of your setup is trade-offs, and how much is like, actually, this is pretty straightforward, we need to do this?
I think you're absolutely right in the sense that it's a lot of trade-off, and as we have grown, we have made a conscious decision to have more standardization. That's more easy at a lower scale to have a very large diversity within your team. But the more you grow, the more you need enough standardization across some common blocks. I will share examples around AWS, because that's a great example. When we have smaller team, we are really encouraging people to write their own cloud formation themselves, because they're in control. But the more you grow the number of teams, that kind of each cloud formation becomes a dependency or a liability, because when you need to update 26 of them, I simplify, but when you need to multiple repositories, many of them, that's become really complex. And this is where you have the power of abstraction. Can we actually abstract enough? And I think that really resonates with one of the rules about when do you need to abstract or not repeat yourself when you write function, right? Some junior developers sometimes are very keen to just say, oh, I'm just going to generalize my function. And more senior developers come and say, no, wait, copy paste at least 2 or 3 times before you start abstracting and refactoring and making this generate. I think we can apply the same thinking here, which is to say, at the beginning, you may not need very lot of common standard solution, depending on the size. And the more you grow, the more you feel you need some of those common tools between your team. And what is the right number, which is which number of there is an obvious answer. I will say that at The Guardian, we have definitely seen the benefit for how some of central tooling can help teams to be much more efficient at doing their jobs, simply of delivering value to the organization. Because from early on, 10 years ago, I think we started developing our own deployment tool, which is called Riffraff. And this has been a massive success story, which is linked to the quality of the tool and the quality of the developer that work on that tool, but still in use. But we have seen how a common deployment tool used by all the teams help massively in terms of doing your job, because you don't need to worry about it. You know the tool you are going to use. And when you switch team, which is another thing we do in terms of collaboration, in terms of knowledge practice or knowledge sharing practice, having the common tools for doing all of your deployment is massively helpful, rather than every team having to a bit reinvent the wheel and just say, oh, how are we going to manage deployment?
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to be constantly, doing the same thing over and over again, or spending your time constantly learning how to use new systems, when really you are all the same team, working on the same platform.
And I was mentioning conscious decision is something we've discussed a lot with team. I would say a year and a half ago, about what should be our technology strategy and what are the main issues or challenges you see as more experienced developers within the organization. What do you see? And a lot of the developers came back to us and said, well, there is just too many choices to be made. Like, some people are using PNPM, some people are using Yarn, some people are using NPM. A lot of developers were asking for a more standardized solution. standardization. I just give the example of client-side package manager, but you can generalize this for a lot of other things. And obviously, again, at which point do you just give everyone just exactly the same tool? I don't think this is the right solution. It's all about working the right trade-off. And having that, I think I've heard about this expression like breaking glass capability, where you have an emergency and you want to break glass to take something different. I mean, it's the same as if you want to go with a standard approach of doing things. But sometimes, for various reasons, you may want to not follow this conventional road or the standard road, and you break the glass and say, well, in my project or in this particular case, I want to use a specific tool which I think is better fit for purpose. And that's autonomy or ability to have flexibility is, I think, really key for success. Any approach which is too dogmatic and just say there's only one tool and this is a tool across as many of the teams can't be successful in my mind.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice analogy, because it's showing that balance between standardization and flexibility. And I think it's quite a good example, or quite a good way of communicating like the level you have to reach. Like, it's not everyone does, uses whatever tool they want all the time, and it's a free-for-all. It's in exceptional circumstances, right? When there is sufficient need, that's the time to do something differently. Okay, great. Let me just move on to my second question. So The Guardian has a reputation for strong digital technical capability, and that requires hiring the best people. So how does The Guardian as an organization attract the talent it needs when there is such a scarcity in the industry? And obviously the flip side of that as well is, how do you retain people once you get them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm sure many organizations.
I'll be taking notes. We all want the answer to this question.
I will say first, as an independent news organization, this is probably one of our main challenge, which is how do we attract the brightest people to work for something that's really a purpose from the community, and not for those people to just join companies that are paying the most. In the past, there's been tech company, and really, I would say same from NHS or HMRC, how all of those things which are more not for profit but more for community may be attractive or attract the best talent and the brightest talent. And really it's a challenge as an organization, and one key things for me as a role is making sure we can attract bright people and have them understand that they can build and have a successful career and have incredibly good challenge to solve. And I think the first things, which is purpose, right? Wherever the company or wherever the stuff is, like, we have a purpose. Our value are more than 100 years old. They were set out by C.P. Scott in 1921. And our values, I think, is the first thing that are helping us, because people know why they joined The Guardian. Usually they have a very good idea about what we stand for. And this is really good. And I think I've mentioned other companies, but I think it should be true in most of the companies. Like, company need a purpose, and people should join first because they believe in the purpose of the company. There is obviously other reason, for instance, salaries and others, but I think first it's really should be the purpose of companies that attract people. But it's not the only things we are doing to try to attract great talent and retain them. And something which is really linked to our purpose is that we have this principle of working in the open. And it means we encourage people to contribute to open source, for instance, but it goes just beyond that. Right? For instance, we create our GitHub repository public by default because we want to encourage people to work in the open, which is linked to transparency. Because actually a lot of people are supporting The Guardian financially. It's quite good for us to be able to say, look, this is what we are doing. It's not secret. This is how we operate. It's good as well because it's encourage people to think about their collaboration and their way of thinking in a way of like, look, your work is public, and the collaboration you will have, which is public, which is good reflection for people to think about. Okay, actually, the way I'm going to do it is going to be public. So doing something a bit about or sketch actually shouldn't be doing it, right? So it's helpful as a reflection. On a very operational perspective, I think it's really interesting properties for security, for instance, because it forces people to really separate away secrets or private information from what actually can be public and in infrastructure. So it's forcing developers and others to think about separation of concern. Actually, there is secrets. They should not be stored in my repository. They should be injected. Right? Otherwise, private repository by default is not encouraging, but it may be hiding those problems where it's forcing us in public. And there is another really interesting aspect of working in the open, which I think is great. Is like, first you can show your work to other people, other colleagues or friends or people, and it's great to be able to share, especially in a world specifically for software engineering, where there is so many open source, public repository, Gist or code example. It's great to show to other people how things are done and how things can be done. It's great as well when people left the Guardian to be able to say, this is what I've done. This is public, you can see it, you can see. So I think there's a lot of benefit for this, and I think it's really helpful for people that are interested to join the Guardian to be able to look, oh yeah, I see what they're doing. I can see how people interact, and it's remove a barrier of friction for people to discover the Guardian.
I think it's really interesting how it ties back to the purpose of the organization as well, that it's actually about connection to the community and accountability to the wider community, right? I think that's also quite a neat aspect of that.
Beyond just putting source code, right? We have put our performance framework and paybans, which are available on GitHub, and people can search for it and find them. And again, that transparency is, I think, really good for us when people are, oh, maybe I will be looking at the Guardian. You can find this information and you can see by yourself, which is removing a barrier of friction. Right? I don't know if this organization for me, or are they paying? What is that to be? Where I'm going to be assessed? Well, we put all of that information so people can discover by themselves, which is interesting because it helps us as well on onboarding, because people have already seen this information and it's public and it's the same information. When they're on board, there is something less to discover. They already know and they can come back.
And it helps them to decide if you're right for them, right? In advance, yeah.
And they can see. And we've put something really linked to that, which is the culture. I've mentioned purpose, but the culture is really important for people before they choose a company and join. It's like, oh, it is to work in practice. What is the culture? So we've put our engineering culture on GitHub as well. It's available, it's been contributed by many people. And we encourage current employee to update it if they think they have an idea. And we put it again in GitHub in the sense of like, you can, external people can see it, you can see how it is. I think it's crystallized that, okay, before I join, I understand how this company operates, I can see it, and I can decide is it for me or not. And when you join, after you join, if you see a behavior, if you see something not happening in the way it's presented in the culture, you can refer to it. Like you can call out or even mention if you say, well, I saw our culture was doing this. Why are we not practicing it? So I think it's a really great tool for building or materializing that purpose and providing an environment which is great. And just want to dismiss my 2 lines. Like, I think our culture is highly collaborative, but it's as well really encouraging people to grow and progress. And I think this is the 2 aspects which has been for us really important in retaining people, which is we know we're not having the highest salary on the market, and we know we will probably never be able to afford because the money that people support, we wanted to go for journalists first, we're not a for-profit organization. So we have to follow the market, but we can't offer top of the band. So it's really good to offer something else and something different to the people and just salary package. So we really encourage the growth, and by means growth is not only a progression within career, but as well knowledge, skill set, and others. And the two examples of things we do around this, which is really interesting. The first one is we have our own schools, which is run by directly some of the developers. One of them I've been running for a long time is the Scala School, but just opening an AWS school. And this is run by individuals and by more senior developers or people with that skill set, which is a great opportunity for people to grow. It's like we offer them the ability to mentor others and to train others, which is again a good skill set. The more senior you become, the more it's about sharing your knowledge and teaching how to do things to others, right? It shows that you're really an expert if you can explain some difficult concept to more junior people or people that are new into that specific knowledge. The second thing we do is 10% time, and 10% time is very different from the 20% time famous from Google. There is 10% of time, so one day every 2 weeks, where we want people to spend time learning. So you can work with any technology, you can decide to contribute to a pull request, fix a bug, learn a new language. It's your time as an individual, and it's not linked to being productive or not being productive directly. You don't have to spend time on a new product. It's not for building a new product. It's really for, as an individual, there is some technologies that I'm interested, or some things I'm interested.
It's to develop yourself as an individual.
And do not go quick. Most of the time, it's about delivering value, and we encourage people to go fast. 10% time is the contrary. Go down the rabbit hole, find exactly why something is not working as expected, or find why something is working in a way, and take that time to, learn something that otherwise you will never have the time to learn. And I think incredibly important in the technology world, where, I mean, how many new technologies there is and how many new releases there is of software, like it's a constant, right? And there is a fear of missing out, I think, for a lot of developers. It's just like, well, in 2 years' time, all of the technologies I've previously learned, how I'm going to still be relevant. So providing that opportunity for people to be able to continuously learning and spending time about their new interest is, I think, one thing that is really good for them to be able to retain them. Sorry, the last thing I wanted to mention on this is rotation. We really encourage people to move between teams. I've mentioned we have many teams, but we really make an effort encouraging people to move teams across their Guardian career, which is first a great way for them to evolve. After 1 year, years, you may want to ask, okay, I've looked at all the stuff that I want a new challenge. That's a great way for people to have a new challenge and stuff. But it has a lot of other values. One of them is the knowledge sharing, because when you do that, you constantly have to say, oh, how are we going to share knowledge? When you have a team which remains the same for a long period of time, naturally people will just have knowledge in their head. So it's for them to see, well, you start, I can't understand. Because I've been talking about the same thing. So when there is always a bit of movement in the team, it forces the team to say, okay, how are we going to introduce someone new? And how are we keeping all documentation and stuff? So this has the value about encouraging knowledge sharing, as well as it has the value about standardization, because when you're working a team, you can come with all of your existing knowledge and baggage and apply them to another team. So we found this as a really interesting tool for keeping people motivated, aligning around standardization and guidelines and stuff, and ensuring we have really good knowledge sharing between teams and others.
Yeah, and I think those are always the best policies, aren't they? When they're actually solving several of your challenges at once. Yeah. It's not just that they're win-win, they're kind of like win-win-win-win, you know, because they're helping in all kinds of different ways. Yeah. I've got loads more questions to ask you. However, we started getting questions in from the audience, and I want to prioritize making sure that I'm asking you the things that people want to hear. So our first question from Priyanka, and this is actually very relevant to what we were just discussing. So how fluid are the roles? So we're kind of talking about switching between engineering teams, but within engineering and engineering roles, maybe product roles and development roles and design roles, or even, as Priyanka says, like between tech engineering and even journalism, writing, editing. How fluid are those roles, or is everyone very, do they stay very much within their function?
I think there is different level of fluidity within engineering. There is a lot of fluidity possible because in general, there is much more open roles because the market has been very open. There have been a lot of people changing in general. So there is constantly opportunities for people to start. And we have had several people that move from full stack developers to become iOS developer or native developers. To the contrary, we have had people that have been full stack developers that become security developer. So we have got quite now within our department, where there is other functions, there is as well a bit of fluidity, but it's not as easy because the skill set are much more different. And we have seen it, right? There is people that are moving between product engineering, and usually where we do this is around secondment, right? There is a secondment which is open and people have the opportunity to try. But especially when people have already a more senior role technically, it's not always easy to accept to become a more junior role in another function. But it's necessary because you learn and new things. So it's existing, but it's far less frequent that it will be within engineering, where actually being a software developer, there is some specific skill set, but most of the job is very similar, and you can change technology quite easily. The last level of fluidity, I would say, will be within work within department, but you want to work in an editorial department. I will say this is much more difficult, and there is some good reason for it, right? If you want to become a journalist at The Guardian, it's incredibly difficult because first, we are not hiring a lot of people. And when we're hiring someone, competition, you will have many other candidates. So it's not impossible, but you have to accept that you will be not in a privileged position against external writer or external candidates. I would like to apply in an editorial position. Of course, you may have internal knowledge and organization knowledge that may give you a bit of an edge on some aspect, but the competition here would be incredibly hard because The Guardian is very looked at from an editorial perspective, and you will see many people candidating with incredible skills. And if you have writing skill as a software developer, they may not immediately translate as skill set as a journalist. So yeah, it's not easy. It's not impossible either, but you have to be conscious that it will be much. You will not be fundamentally at an advantage being a software developer at The Guardian to become a
I think that makes sense. It reminds me of another question, actually. So given that The Guardian is a news organization, how much technical expertise makes it to the very top of the company? Like, are you likely to ever see a CEO who's come up from the tech side, or is it always the news side has priority in terms of decision making?
No, I think it's interesting. I think the Guardian is a very collaborative place, which means there is a large amount of interaction between people in different departments around decision making. I think you will see people directly collaborating with people in editorial on their project and directly discussing. I think the huge difference is that because people are really caring about The Guardian, there will always be a lot of debate around something, and it will go much deeper than just the commercial interest or the benefits from the organization. A large number of times we will discuss technology around our purpose and how much they align or disalign with our purpose. And this makes this place so interesting, and really a lot of people, when they left, they just say, well, never seen a place where people are so passionate about our role and our mission. And it makes sometimes decisions take a long time because really people want to explore all of the aspects of something. But it's incredibly, I think, interesting, because you have the opportunity to hear other people's perspective. It's not just about technology, it's what is the impact for the society, what is the reason we are doing this. And it really, people understand, I think at the higher level, people understand the technology and technology impact, but they were always going to discuss about the challenge. What does it mean? What is it mean in terms of impact to the world? What does it mean? Why are we doing this? So they will always question, in a good way, right? Question, why are we doing this? What does it mean? And they will very, as well, I think it's a really good quality from people working in news organizations and editorial in general. They're very curious. So they ask questions. The first thing a journalist or someone in editorial will do is they will ask questions to know more about something, because they want to hear. They want to understand from people that knows what does that mean, and why are you saying this? What does that word mean, and how that works? People are incredibly interested by technical aspects on how things work and why we make some of the decisions.
Yeah, and that's a really nice answer to hear, to kind of refer back to Priyanka's question, right? That maybe you will work within your function. You know, if you're within technology, you will work within technology, but your impact and interaction within the wider organization will be broader. You know, you are still part of the whole team.
Absolutely, and we have seen that collaboration well several times. And what I think is really interesting is that you have different typical type of profile. Someone that works in the editorial side in a news organization usually has spent quite a lot of years. There are rarely quite a lot of new people. So there are people that have been working in the organization for quite a long time. And not only this, because they've been seeing the evolution of technology across the years. They have a very good reflection about how journalists can be used or cannot be used, and do that. While people that join the Guardian on the technology side usually have far less years of experience in journalism, right? They may have a career somewhere else, and they switch vertical much more easily in their career, and they will have fresh ideas and they will have excellent knowledge about technical and technological. So you get this combination between two different type of profiles. Someone that's been in a news organization for a long time and it's all about the Guardian and the evolution of tech. Or you get someone that have been working in the different verticals and much new to the organization with a lot of knowledge. And a key, I think, for project in general or product to be successful, you need to have these two kind of people in general really well working together and building that sense of trust. And really estimate each other's for their skill sets and knowledge. Yeah. And people realizing, oh, there is a reason why we have not done this, because someone on the other side has been thinking really, really hard about this for many years, actually. And the other side, like someone on his other side, realizing, wow, actually technology may enable us to do this a bit differently now, which is really interesting. And we have seen that in many teams when you have that trust relationship where people are not afraid of sharing with each other, sometimes crazy idea, that trust. And then interestingly, interpersonal relationship is a really good predictor of success, right? The more people have great relationship between each other, the more likely we have seen teams to be successful.
Yeah, and actually it's the only way you can do it, because it's another one of these trade-offs where you, of course, there is expertise, and there is expertise that's built up over a long time, but there's also new ideas, and new ideas are almost a challenge to expertise, right? It's because sometimes there will be a new way. Sometimes you need to know how to do it because you've done it already, and sometimes, and it's working out which of those applies is what the challenge is. Let's take it. We've got some questions from Anna here. So, and maybe I will ask you all of Anna's questions together, and then hopefully we can tie it all together. So Anna's first question is, you spoke about the technical challenges of the recent growth in developers. What are the lessons you learned about people, organizational aspects in onboarding a lot of developers? And then she asks, what is your vision prediction for the next 5 years for Guardian Engineering? And finally, what have you been most excited about in the past year, and what are you looking forward to? So we might have to do one at a time, or try and combine them.
I would say onboarding. I think onboarding is hard, definitely. I think we knew before, but let's make it more concrete to onboard quite a lot of people. It's really hard, and we talk about trade-off. One of the big trade-offs is how much we make it discoverable for people about past experiments, past work, past reason. In tech, we use quite frequently architecture decision record. That's great, but when you are such a big organization, how do you find them? How did you find what was made, and what was the assumption being made at that time? So it's hard to be able to share as much knowledge as there is existing. At the same time, the trade-off is as well letting people make their own tests and make their own mistake, because there is no other better way to learn than by doing some of the stuff yourself and finding problems. By every great senior lead staff developer is someone that made mistakes in their career, learn by doing, and take lessons from the mistakes. So it's not just about, oh, we give you everything, here's all of the answers, and here is you apply new idea. There is that balance between sharing as much as information as you can so that it's helpful for people, but letting people as well to rediscover or discover again some of those lessons, just because they need it from their own growth and personal career development, right? It's like, and it's the same for every role. It's not just technical, it's the same in management. You have to do management to become more managers. And it will mean you are going to make mistakes. You can read as many books you want for management until you practice it and you make some of the mistakes yourself. You're not going to really become a more senior manager or a better manager.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about, what have you been most excited about in the past year, and what are you looking forward to, and what's your vision prediction for the next 5 years?
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's quite a lot of subject. I really think there is a very loud subject which is around authenticity of news. And as you know, and many of you have seen the development of large language models and AI is really, from a technology perspective, incredibly exciting and incredibly scary. There will be new usage and stuff, but I think it's for digital journalists asking a large question about what is the role of a news organization, and how do people will consider authenticity and veracity. And we have a large number of people thinking about that, not only technologists, but thinking about why if you were having an image illustration that is actually generated rather than unwritten, and what does it, it's not only about obviously the time to produce it, it's about the impact it has on readers. What does readers assume if the content is generated rather than uncrafted, and how much they change their position around the amount of content we are producing. So we have a lot of people at the Guardian currently thinking about that, I'm not sure it's guidance, more was like, this is how we want to operate within digital journalists, and what digital journalists means in the context of those existing technologies. Where are your use cases where those technology can be useful as a news organization versus where they're going to be harmful by themselves. So I think it's incredibly exciting for us to see how some of those technology can be useful and help us produce greater journalists, quicker journalists, better journalists. An example, very good example, has been our investigation. We have been investing recently a lot in our investigation tools. We are providing more tools for helping journalists to discover about facts, and we've been spending really large amounts of people and resources to try helping digital investigation. And for sure, some of those tools and technology in general around AI and large language models and machine learning in general can be incredibly helpful. There's a large number of documents with a large number of sense, connecting the dots and helping someone to produce great content of journalism, 100%. But there is that aspect to trust and to truth in general, which is really going to be interesting, and how much people are going to trust something that is quite frequently, I mean, if you look at ChatGPT, it can provide really good answers, but there could be mistakes in them, right?
Right, they're not necessarily true.
They're not really true. So there could be really great content and great response, but there are going to be mistakes and stuff. So what is going to be as an audience, how people are going to trust or not those tools, and how much actually we should have a synthetic audience. I'm just using an example, I'm not sure it's answers, but we should expect people to come to news organization as well. No, actually, if I want really to trust source of information, I need to go to a news organization. I should not be using directly a reference, or I use ChatGPT, but there is Bard, I think the new Bard compiler, and there is Bing from Microsoft. So there is a large number of technology breakthroughs are going to disrupt, obviously, the model of information. And on our side is really, as a news organization, thinking it's less about, well, the immediate use case, but what is the right frame for us to be able to exploring those technologies and using them in a way that is helpful, not only for us, but for society. And very similar to some of the conversation we have had in the past around attention time. And as you all know, our Facebook and Instagram have been encouraging people to use a lot of the attention time and becoming really having users becoming addicted to their app. And of course, we always want our journalists to be read and understood by people, but as a news organization, our goal is not for people to be addicted to their news app, right? Not at all, of course. So that really get something we discuss and trying to find what is the right frame for us when we think about metrics, and when we think what do we want our readers to be able to do with their apps, how we do that, and how do we, the choice of metrics, the choice of the things we decide are affecting the society, not only the Guardian by itself.
Yeah. So we live in exciting times right now, don't we? You know, there have been big changes and more to come.
Definitely.
Great. So we've got another question from Andrew Speakman. So on the topic of moving between teams within engineering, what do you do to make this easier? So do you have documentation or process standards to help the new team members get up to speed more quickly? So I guess it's kind of like the onboard is another onboarding question, but the onboarding within the team, what do you have?
Yeah, what we have is that frequently teams have their own a bit of internal onboarding process, which is either a pack of documents or it's kind of a Trello board with a lot of, like, if you're new to the team,
yes,
of what you need to do. I think, again, this is really interesting on our debate about standardization versus autonomy. Here, we have seen in the past that's quite a lot. It's good for teams to think themselves about it. And what is actually useful for a team on board may not be totally the same as what is useful in other teams. So we rather encourage teams to think about this within their remit. What do you do for making easier on boarding and come? And obviously there is template, right? People are going to share templates. Oh, you have seen this in that team. So can we borrow your template? Or example is, I think commercial dev team recently make a fantastic, almost simple book about joining their team, and others were very jealous and said, oh, can you share the template you have made so I can reuse it? And so it's more something where we expect them to collaborate, but have their own kind of version on onboarding. But yes, definitely there is documentation. Frequently we have this kind of concept of tickets or issues or bugs that can be a good first start, things to start with. Very frequently there is a bit of jargon buster, like a lot of people are going to use new acronyms and new words you've not heard. It's really important for you to understand what they're talking about. So here, the 50 acronyms are going to be used frequently in your team, and that's quite a common theme about specific jargon, specific terms are very used in the team, and if you just joined, you may not know about them, so it may make things a bit cryptic until you understand all of it.
Yeah, and I think that's another good kind of referring back to earlier about standardization versus autonomy. This is actually an area where it doesn't need to be standardized. It needs to all be done very much with the end in mind, and perhaps be constantly evolving anyway, because the teams are constantly evolving. And so how you bring someone new into that team is going to be different if they join 6 months later or in a few years' time, you know, when things have moved on and there's new things that are higher priority to learn. And so it's more important to think about the objective and the ends rather than, you know, there's no point having documentation if it doesn't do the job, right?
Totally, and that's one of the things we frequently encourage new starter in a team. I mean, is to say a team is a composition of individuals. So when someone new joins, some of the things the teams are going to change, and it's fine to acknowledge that the interaction you create, there is going to be some change. And yeah, when the team changes, the way the team work is going to evolve. There is still things that remain, but we should really encourage teams to evolve their way of thinking. I mean, this is a very example of our agile, but we use the retro at the end. We use sprint of 2 weeks and we do retro, and we really encourage teams to say, discuss about problem, discuss about the things you would like to change, because it's not because the way you are doing things are working in the past that are going to work in the future. So feel free to adapt a bit some of your process to make it work within your team, and really discuss that together, right? This is a team agency and team autonomy. You have agency to make some change in the way you work within your team. There is obviously principle, and there is stuff around inclusion that are really important, right? You want to think people included, and other principles. I think we use some common tooling. I mentioned the blocker and dependencies meeting where we discuss about blocker and dependency, but within the team, there is millions of things you do and interaction that are not codified. And those ones are the one where you want the team to find what works for them and how they adapt constantly over time.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, this has been amazing. Thank you so much, Mariot. I really, really enjoyed this chat. And thank you so much to everyone who asked your questions. They were very insightful questions. And Mariot, I really appreciate you sharing so candidly about the challenges and the trade-offs and how you make things work to support such a great news organisation as The Guardian. I'd like to remind everyone we have more events at Softwire coming up in April and May, so please do keep an eye on our online calendar. The talk will be recorded and sent out to all attendees, and yeah, I hope to see you all soon.
Thank you so much for that was great talking to you. I hope everyone enjoyed and I've got something to learn or interesting.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Good.